Hey everyone, I'm back again with another thrill packed memory of incredible people that I've been so fortunate to meet in my life. Now, this is, this is totally unexpected, and I hope you stay with me till the end till you find out who this guy really is. This is how it happened. Visiting our wonderful dealers for the UK, we're in Glasgow, Scotland. This was Westside Distributing, Phil Hay and Johnny X, a couple of better guys you could never find. Just terrific guys, down to earth and all that. Did a good job for us for a long, long time too. They were Glaswegians. That's what you call somebody from Glasgow. There's a bit of esoteric knowledge that you could never forget. Any rate, after that, we took this luxury train ride, the Royal Scotsman, and it was kind of like a cruise ship, only it was a train, and it went all over in Scotland, and it was pretty deluxe accommodations. Um, the the only thing that was kind of weird was it seemed like they were having a convention of gynecologists on board this train, and that's all it seemed like the topics were. Now, gynecology. Hey, I like pussy as much as the next guy, but not quite in the same way that these people were all about it. Nevertheless, after a couple of days, the train stopped, and on got this couple, very tall, elderly. Both of them were quite tall, and the man, as tall as he was, he had a couple of canes because he was I don't know, well into his 80s. And they sat at another table and had dinner. So the dining car was sort of like a deluxe restaurant. At any rate, I told Suzanne, I said, let's go chat those people up. They're all alone. I'm sick of all of the gyno twins here everywhere. So we go over and introduce ourselves, and they're immediately charming. The guy looks at Suzanne and he goes, "Aye, lass, you're a wee Highland lass," and his eyes are twinkling like crazy. "And she's got this fluty voice and talks like this." Her voice resonated throughout everything. And the guy asked me, he said, "So what interests you about Scotland?" And I said, "Well, one thing I'm interested in is Scottish single malt whiskey." And he goes, "Aye, lad, now there's a topic." And he gets up and he talks to the concierge and comes back after 10 or 15 minutes and sits back down. And so our conversation's going on. And then here come the waiters, each one carrying a silver tray with 7 shot glasses on it, each one containing a different brand of Scottish single malt. And he says, "Now, lad, I'm going to teach you the geography of Scotland." So we started with the lowland, one from Edinburgh, and then we worked our way up through the Midlands and the Highlands and the Heather Heath. And then each one, he's telling me the geography, and we're having a sip. "Oh, well, that's delicious. Oh, that's fine." Speyside, Islay, the entire geography of Scotland. And after we'd gone down the row of 7, he mixed them all up and he told me, he said, "Okay, that one, which one, tell me which one that is." And I got it right. He said, "Okay, that one, which one is that?" And I got it right. They're all really distinctive. And he said, "Aye, lad, I'd like to invite you to my ancestral college. Would you like to join me for lunch tomorrow?" I said, "Well, yeah, we're just going to turn that down." So we're there, and he had a piper with a bagpipe playing as we walked into his, it was kind of fabulous, kind of run down. But again, he was real old. It was real old. He had big portraits of his ancestors going up the staircase, blah, blah, blah. And he started to tell me some stories, which I'd ask him about. Then he said, "Well, my good friend and schoolmate was this guy named Winston Churchill. And we were both part of the diplomatic corps. That's what you get to be when you're in the aristocratic society." And he said, "But I didn't want to be in that striped pants diplomatic corps during World War II. I wanted to get out and actually do something." And so Churchill kept saying, "Come on, blah, blah, blah." And this guy, Sir Fitzroy MacLean, argued with him, and he finally had this plan that he proposed. And here's how it went. What he proposed was, if we could get to Tripoli in Libya and sabotage a ship to block the port, we could cut off the Nazis' reinforcements for their whole Africa campaign. And Churchill said, yeah, great idea, but that's like the most guarded port in the Mediterranean, if not the world. Because and Sir Fitzroy said, no, I know that. So my idea is, and here's where he was inventing commando warfare. He said, I'm not talking about taking ships and a big arm. No, I'm talking about coming around the backside into Tripoli. Then Churchill says, right, that's the Sahara Desert. And he said, I know it's the Sahara Desert, and that's what I'm talking about. A lightweight, fast-moving contingent of really fit guys. And Churchill tries to talk him out of it, and actually Sir Fitzroy talked Winston Churchill into giving him permission to do this. So off they set, right? And there's 5, 6 guys, and so they take off, and they're in the Sahara Desert trying to get across, like hundreds of miles of desert to come into the backside of Tripoli. First thing that happens is a big sandstorm, and they're lost. And then the sandstorm gets away. Half of their gear is messed up and doesn't work right anymore. So they're close to starving. And finally, they're out in the middle of nowhere, just as trackless sand dunes, and they run into this Bedouin. And so they're asking the Bedouin, is there an oasis? We need water. We're dying out here. And the Bedouin guides him, tells him where there is an oasis. So they get to the oasis, and they get refreshed enough that they're still alive and healthy. And then they start worrying. They're like, oh, man, that Bedouin, that guy's going to sell us out for a big reward. He's going to go tell the Germans that there's these guys coming around through the desert. And so Sir Fitzroy radios Winston Churchill asking for permission to abort the mission. He said, we've been discovered. We're gonna meet machine guns if we. And Churchill says, hey, I warned you. I tried to talk you out of this, and no. So no permission. You stay on the program. You are not allowed to abandon your program. So they're, holy shit. So 5, 6 days later, there's about 4 or 5 of them left, and they stagger into the backside of Tripoli, and they're wiped out. The only thing they've had is Scotch whiskey to keep them going. So here we can see this, a handful of drunk Scotsmen coming into the backside of Tripoli with hopes to sabotage and sink a ship out in the. Well, that never happened, but what did happen is this. First, the Bedouin did sell them out for the reward. Second, Rommel, the desert fox, took a third of his Africa Corps and shipped them from Egypt to Libya to Tripoli, because what he thought was this giant military invasion was going to come through the desert and into the backside of Tripoli, when in reality it was 5 drunk Scotsmen. The upshot was this: because the desert fox, that's what Rommel was known as, had diverted so much of his forces to blunt this supposed invasion, the Allies actually had their first World War II success at El Alamein, and that was the beginning of the turning of World War II. This was the first victory. It wasn't, I don't know how well you know World War II, but there was a long time thinking we're losing, they're winning, especially in Europe. And really, this was a moral high ground, because for once, the Allies actually won, and they defeated Rommel, who was this brilliant strategist who had basically taken over all of Africa. So I'm just thrilled by these stories. He had another one that was almost equally interesting. Marshal Tito of Yugoslavia. They were trying to figure out, is he pro-Nazis or not? And they figured, well, he is a communist. We don't like commies. But he seems to be, because that notion of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So they were trying to find out which side he's on, but nobody could find this guy, Marshal Tito of Yugoslavia. And so Sir Fitzroy, after the successful Africa campaign, he talks Churchill into another wacky thing. He said, I'm going to parachute in there in the middle of the night, and I'm going to find the guy. And we'll have conferences and find out whether we can rely on him or whether he's pro-Nazi. Well, and Churchill saying, yeah, but nobody knows where he is. And he said, I know that. And that's why I'm just going to be on the ground and I'm going to find him. So this is what happens. He does parachute in there, again, commando warfare. And he spends 2 weeks trying to find the guy. He's the president of Yugoslavia. And he finally does find him. The capital is a train car that's constantly moving. That's why nobody could figure out where Tito was, because he had abandoned the capital thinking, well, that's the first place they're going to look and bomb and everything. And so, once again, here's Sir Fitzroy drinking with Marshal Tito on this train, which is the de facto capital, and it keeps moving. And he did find out that, yeah, there are commies. We don't like commies, but the commies didn't like the Nazis even more, so there was an arrangement there where they could count on Marshal Tito to help them to blunt and eventually defeat the Nazis. So after the day of hanging around in this guy's house, and I bought a couple of his books, and I bought some of his scotch. He had his own scotch there called Old McFun, Phunn. I get back to the train, and I'm telling this to the concierge, and he said, well, you know who that is, don't you? And I said, well, yeah, it's Sir Fitzroy. No, you know who that is? I said, yeah, Sir Fitzroy MacLean. No, there's something you're missing here, buddy. That guy's best buddy was Ian Fleming. Sir Fitzroy is the prototype, model, and inspiration for the character James Bond. And he lived it up because he still had this twinkle in the eye. He still went for women like crazy. And obviously, he did this commando warfare completely unplanned, dealt with the issues, and was highly successful. What a wonderful thing. We exchanged letters until he died. We sent letters back and forth because he was just, I don't know what he saw in me, but maybe what he saw in me was admiration for him. One of the great characters I was so blessed to meet. So I hope you listened this far. Again, I keep saying this. I love the comments. So keep them coming. Thank you all. See you next time.